The smell hit me first. Warm, fresh eggs, stolen right out of my coop. I knew it before I even saw the crime scene. My chicken, Dolly, was squawking her little lungs out, feathers ruffled in outrage. And there she was, my neighbor, Susan, bent over my nesting boxes, swiping eggs with the precision of a seasoned thief. She wasn't even trying to hide it. No shame, no guilt, just stuffing my fresh eggs into her overpriced handbag like she had a coupon for them. "Susan," I yelled, stomping toward her. She didn't even flinch, just turned around with that signature smirk that made my blood pressure rise. "Oh, hey, didn't see you there," she chirped, as if I hadn't just caught her elbow deep in my chicken's hard work. "Didn't see me? You're in my backyard," I snapped, pointing at the fence she had so clearly ignored. My property line wasn't some vague suggestion. It was a reality she had decided to bulldoze right over. She sighed dramatically, clutching the stolen eggs like she was the victim. "Look, eggs are a natural product. Your chickens don't technically own them, right? And nature is meant to be shared," she said, as if she were delivering some profound wisdom instead of outright nonsense. I stared at her, trying to decide if I was in some kind of bizarre dream. "Susan, you climbed into my yard. You stole from me. How do you not see the issue here?" Susan scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard I was worried they'd get stuck. "Oh, please. You have plenty. It's not like you even need all these. What are you hoarding eggs like some kind of farm dragon?" I clenched my jaw. This woman had stolen from me before, lemons from my tree, a bag of sugar off my porch, even my Amazon packages once. But this was personal. My chickens were my pride and joy. They weren't laying eggs for her entitled brunch cravings. "I work hard for these," I snapped. "My chickens work hard for these. If you want eggs, go get your own chickens." Susan waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, too much work. Anyway, I have to run. Brunch plans, you wouldn't understand." And with that, she turned, stepping right back over the fence as if she hadn't just committed grand theft poultry. I stood there, fuming, watching her disappear into her house like nothing had happened. That was it. This was the last straw. I wasn't about to let her waltz in and treat my backyard like a free-range grocery store. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table staring at a fresh basket of eggs, an idea started forming, a delicious, evil, karma-infused idea. Susan wanted eggs? Fine. She'd get eggs. Just not the ones she expected. I picked up my phone and called Leo, my best friend and fellow neighborhood sufferer of Susan's nonsense. "How bad do rotten eggs smell?" I asked. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Bad enough that you're up to something." "I need a favor," I said, already grinning. By morning, the plan was in motion. Leo had come through with a batch of ripe eggs, sweet cold, borderline toxic, the kind of eggs that could clear out a house. We swapped them into my coop, carefully positioning them where Susan wouldn't hesitate to steal. Then we waited. It didn't take long. Just before noon, like clockwork, Susan crept into my yard again, moving with the grace of a raccoon who thought it was being sneaky. I watched from my window, heart pounding with anticipation. She reached into the nesting box, grabbed a handful of eggs, and, without even looking, stuffed them into her fancy purse. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. Oh, this was going to be good. Later that evening, the first signs of disaster came in the form of a scream, a high-pitched, horrified wail from Susan's house, followed by the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. My phone buzzed, and I pulled up the neighborhood group chat. Susan was typing in all caps. "Who did this? The eggs were rotten. My kitchen smells like a landfill. My guests almost threw up. This is an act of war." I leaned back in my chair, grinning. Leo sent a message next. "Wait, you mean the eggs you stole?" The chat exploded. People laughing, some even egging Susan on with jokes about karma. She tried to defend herself, claiming she had permission. She didn't. That she had no idea. She did. But it was too late. The neighborhood had spoken. And I just sat back, sipping my tea, enjoying the show. Nature had handled it perfectly. The moment Susan's scream tore through the neighborhood, I knew it had begun. I had been sitting in my kitchen, savoring the anticipation like a chef waiting for the souffle of karma to rise. My phone was buzzing nonstop, the neighborhood group chat in full meltdown mode. Susan was furious, typing faster than she had ever moved in her life, spitting accusations left and right about how someone had poisoned her eggs and ruined her brunch. She wasn't just mad. She was unraveling. I leaned against my counter, watching as her rage continued to pour out in a string of dramatic texts. She claimed that the smell was unbearable, that her entire kitchen had been tainted by a stench so vile it was worse than a sewage plant on fire. Someone, probably Leo, replied with a simple LOL, which only made Susan explode further. She was demanding answers, threatening lawsuits, and going on about how her brunch was completely destroyed. I could only imagine the chaos inside her house. Rotten eggs weren't just bad, they were a different kind of horror. The moment she cracked one open, the foul, sulfuric stench would have hit her like a freight train, permeating everything. Her countertops, her floors, even the air itself. And the best part? It wasn't just one egg. She had taken enough to ensure that her whole house would be haunted by the smell for days. A few minutes later, the messages stopped. Silence. And that's when I saw her. Susan stormed out of her house like a furious, designer-clad tornado, heading straight for my yard. Her face was twisted in rage, her hair a frazzled mess, and I could see the remains of a ruined outfit, probably the one she had worn for brunch. I stepped outside, casually sipping my coffee, pretending to be surprised as she came barreling toward me. You, she screeched, pointing a trembling, manicured finger at me. What did you do to my eggs? I blinked innocently. Your eggs? I asked, tilting my head. You mean the ones you stole? Susan let out a frustrated growl, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. That is not the point. They were disgusting. Do you have any idea what happened? I cracked them open in front of guests. In my kitchen. The smell. She gagged slightly, probably still haunted by it. It won't go away. My house is ruined. I took another slow sip of coffee. Well, that's weird, I said, feigning deep thought. Those eggs came from my chickens. The same ones you keep stealing from. Maybe they just knew they were going to a thief and decided to go bad out of spite. Susan's eye twitched. She was seething, practically vibrating with fury. You did this on purpose, she hissed. Did I? I mused, raising an eyebrow. Or did nature just decide to handle things? Because as far as I know, I haven't touched a single egg that left my property. You, on the other hand, have been helping yourself for weeks. Her face turned an alarming shade of red, but before she could fire back, Leo strolled up, hands in his pockets, grinning like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. So, let me get this straight, he said, voice dripping with amusement. You stole someone's eggs, then you got mad when they weren't perfect, and now you're demanding an apology? Susan spun on him like a wild animal, her expression livid. Stay out of this, she snapped. Leo just chuckled. Oh no, this is exactly my kind of thing. Susan looked between the two of us, breathing heavily, clearly realizing she wasn't going to win this argument. She switched tactics, straightening her shoulders, flipping her frazzled hair back, and adopting a tone of false righteousness. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. Maybe I borrowed a few eggs. But you deliberately set me up. You've made me a laughingstock. The whole neighborhood is talking about this. I shrugged. Seems fair. You've been helping yourself to my food without permission for ages. Now you're dealing with the consequences. Pretty simple, really. She inhaled sharply, preparing for another tirade, but something caught my attention before she could speak. A few houses down, a couple of people were standing outside, trying to stifle their laughter. They had clearly been listening in. And they weren't alone. More neighbors were watching from their porches, some pretending to water their plants, others peeking through windows. Susan had made quite a name for herself in the neighborhood, mostly for all the wrong reasons. Now, it seemed like karma was making sure everyone knew about it. Realizing she had an audience, Susan tried to regain control of the situation. She dramatically placed a hand on her forehead, as if she were about to faint. I could have gotten sick, she wailed. What if I had food poisoning? What if I had to go to the hospital? Do you even realize the trauma this has caused me? Leo let out a low whistle. Wow. So brave. Truly an inspiration. I fought back a grin. You should probably go air out your house, Susan, I said. That smell. It's going to linger. I'd say at least a week. Susan looked like she wanted to strangle me, but the realization that she had lost completely, utterly lost, was sinking in. She huffed, turned on her heel, and stomped away, muttering under her breath as she stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. Leo and I exchanged a satisfied look. She's not going to let this go, Leo said after a moment. I nodded. I know. Susan was the kind of person who thrived on getting her way, and when she didn't, she doubled down. There was no way this was over. But for now, I was going to enjoy my small victory. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the group chat. It was a private message from Susan. I sighed, opening it. You'll regret this. I stared at the message, then rolled my eyes. Susan thought she was scary, but she was about as intimidating as a wet paper bag. Still, I had a feeling things were about to escalate. Because if there was one thing Susan hated more than not getting what she wanted, it was being embarrassed. And I had just embarrassed her in front of the entire neighborhood. The message from Susan sat on my screen, glowing with petty vengeance. You'll regret this. It was as dramatic as it was predictable. Susan was the type of person who could never take a loss without attempting some sort of comeback, no matter how ridiculous or doomed it was. I had humiliated her, and I knew, deep in my gut, that she wouldn't let it go. She would try something, and knowing her, it would be as dumb as it was entertaining. Sure enough, the next day, she struck again. This time, instead of sneaking into my yard like a raccoon in high heels, she decided to take a more public approach. I was outside collecting fresh eggs and enjoying the morning when I heard a commotion near the end of my driveway. I turned just in time to see Susan setting up what appeared to be a makeshift market stand. My eyes narrowed as she proudly displayed a cardboard sign with the words Fresh Organic EGGS scrawled across it in big, uneven letters. I blinked, processing the sheer audacity. She was selling eggs. Not just any eggs, my eggs. Or at least, she thought they were. Leo, who had come over to return a borrowed drill, stopped mid-step when he saw it. He turned to me, eyebrows raised. Is that? It is, I said, already feeling a mix of amusement and disbelief bubbling up. Susan, oblivious or just too bold to care, was already trying to flag down passing neighbors. Come get your fresh, free-range, farm-to-table eggs, she called out, smiling like she was doing a community service. All natural, hand-collected. The best in town. I watched in stunned silence as a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, wandered over, inspecting the eggs. These look odd, she muttered. Susan put on her best fake salesperson voice. Oh, they're unique. That's how you know they're authentic. Only the best organic eggs have a little character. I nearly choked on my laughter. She had no idea. With barely concealed excitement, I walked over and leaned against the side of the makeshift stand. Morning, Susan. Business going well. The second she saw me, her face stiffened, but she plastered on a tight smile. Oh, wonderful, thank you. Unlike some people, I believe in sharing nature's bounty. I nodded, glancing at the basket of eggs. I recognized them immediately, not because they were fresh, but because they were the leftovers from the rotten batch. The eggs she had stolen from my coop earlier had been a mix, some newly laid, and some from the bottom of the pile that I hadn't gotten around to tossing. They weren't as explosive as the ones that had ruined her brunch, but they were far from edible. Leo, barely holding back his grin, nudged me. Think she tested her product first? Doubt it, I whispered back. Mrs. Gable picked up an egg, sniffed it, and recoiled instantly. Oh, my lord. What is wrong with these? Susan's smile faltered. Oh, it's just, extra organic. You know, real farm freshness. Mrs. Gable shot her a look. This smells like it crawled out of a swamp and died. She dropped the egg back into the basket like it had personally offended her and marched off, muttering about scammers. Susan's face was turning red, but she held her ground. Another neighbor approached hesitantly, picking up an egg. Before she could even crack it, I leaned in slightly. You might want to be careful. Some of those eggs have been sitting for a long time. Susan spun on me, eyes blazing. What are you doing? She hissed under her breath. Helping, I said sweetly. You wouldn't want to sell anyone a bad egg, would you? She bared her teeth in what I could only describe as a Susan snarl. But before she could say anything, fate decided to wrap things up for me in the best way possible. One of the eggs, whether by sheer chance or bad handling, exploded in the hands of an unfortunate customer. The moment it cracked open, the most vile, gut-wrenching stench filled the air. The poor man holding it gagged, dropped it, and stumbled back like he had been personally attacked. A thick, yellowish slime oozed out of the shell, and within seconds, everyone around was covering their noses, eyes watering. Susan shrieked. Oh my God. What? The smell spread rapidly, hitting her like a truck. She staggered backward, tripping over the edge of her stand, sending the rest of her inventory crashing onto the pavement. More eggs broke on impact, unleashing an unholy aroma that had people fleeing like the area had been hit with chemical warfare. Leo was doubled over in laughter. Oh man. Oh wow. That's so much worse than I imagined. Susan, gagging and dry heaving, tried to salvage the situation. It's not my fault. I didn't know. Oh, so you admit you stole bad eggs? I asked, folding my arms. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wild. You? Me? I asked innocently. Susan, these were your eggs. You took them, remember? You've been taking them for weeks. You said yourself, nature should be shared. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her brain was working overtime, desperately trying to spin the situation, but it was hopeless. The damage was done. More neighbors had come outside, drawn by the commotion. The smell alone told them everything they needed to know. Whispers spread. People exchanged knowing glances. And just like that, Susan's reign as the neighborhood's self-proclaimed queen of entitlement came crashing down. Defeated, humiliated, and reeking of spoiled eggs, Susan turned and stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. I exhaled slowly, turning to Leo. Well, that was satisfying. He wiped a tear from his eye. That was legendary. As the last of the rotten egg stench dissipated into the afternoon air, I felt something shift. Susan might still be my neighbor, but she wasn't going to be stealing from me anymore. She had learned her lesson in the most memorable way possible. And best of all, I hadn't even needed to lift a finger. Nature had handled it perfectly.